Hey everyone, I am so excited to have with me Rachel Horton White. Rachel is the owner founder of Soulful Work Intuitive Consulting, author of Tools for the Awakening Soul, a guide to activate your intuition and uncover your life's purpose. So cool. I'm so excited to have you here. I was looking through a lot of your information, and we are like basically in the same wheelhouse. I think what we
hmm
talk about in the information we provide and the assistance, the guidance that we offer others is very, very similar. So I'm
Yeah.
so grateful that you're
Yeah.
here. Thank you so
Yeah, thank you
much.
for having me. So honored.
Yeah. We're going through this amazing awakening process right now. It's affecting so many people. So many people are coming online. They're plugging back into their higher selves. They really kind of lose their way and don't know what's happening. We've been through
Mhm.
that. It's that kind of deer in the headlights feeling. What's happening? Reality gets turned upside down. How would you describe that process?
Yeah. Well, I wish I could say that the awakening process is just this amazing, beautiful, like suddenly is perfect. But in reality, it's more like the illusions are being shattered of what we thought was true. And that can be disconcerting, I guess is the way to put it. And at the same time, absolutely liberating. In my experience, I went through my awakening around 2016, not too long ago. But everything made sense all of a sudden. I was like, oh,
Mm-hmm.
well, I never understood why this thing was like that, or these people were behaving this way, or why, all kinds of different things I started connecting the dots, and it brought me a sense of peace, and understanding. And ultimately it's a deeper connection. The awakening process is a deeper connection with ourselves, and really remembering that we, as I know you talk about, Marc, are
Mm-hmm.
divine beings in human bodies, that we are expressions of God, that we are light. And so it's a remembering of who we really are
Yeah.
as we go through the process of, like, finding out there's no Santa Claus. Sorry, kids, if anybody, hopefully no kids are listening, or fine. It's like, you know,
Surprise.
you've been,
Yeah.
yeah, you've been adopted. It's kind of like your worldview gets shattered at the same time, and everything,
Mm-hmm.
starts to change, and your vibration changes. So it's liberating, and also unsettling at the same time. Is that how
Great
you
way to
experience
put
it?
it. Yeah. I see, a lot of people, I think it kind of sneaks up on them gradually and they have this revelation. And with others, like with me, it was a spontaneous kind of thing. I'd always been intuitive,
Mm.
um, and always knew there was more to this reality than what we can perceive with our five senses. But I was back in 2018, my crown chakra just kind of popped open, and I found myself out in space, floating in space, and all this energy
Wow.
rushing through me, all this information coming forward. Right around that time, it was actually a few weeks before that, met my main spirit guide. Shortly after that awakening moment, had galactics, my star family, come forward. So all sorts of
Yeah.
amazing things that I always felt that they were there, but I guess I really didn't have the awareness of it. It was a feeling that there was more to this life because we get so distracted from day to day
Yeah.
things and our responsibilities and work, that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. The 3D. It's I see it as moving from 3D, through 4D through to 5D,
Mm-hmm.
which is like a different reality. It can seem like we're living in a different reality than other people, just because we kind of are.
We are, and we have the ability to see that and observe that, which is incredibly amazing. And I think that helps. I think that helps allow people to just give that space to others because not everybody's on the same path. Everybody's operating at their own vibrational frequency. They're on their own
Right.
journey, but we have the ability to observe that and we can be compassionate for them. And if we take a step
Yeah.
back, we could actually see aspects of us in them because they're a reflection. So
Absolutely.
even when we're, witnessing things that maybe we don't agree with or things don't feel so good when we're seeing or experiencing it, that's something within us that needs to be healed. So I think through the awakening process, we
100%.
come to terms with that and can
Yeah.
use that reflection.
Yeah. That's helped me a lot when I have gotten frustrated that not
Hmm.
more people are awake around me. And I know you probably experience this too. You know, I think it helps me to remember that everybody has their own soul contracts to play and that we're, going there's that and there's also free will, right? But and we're going to awaken when we're ready. So for some people, even though the writing's on the wall, there's all kinds of signs around them, and they kind of see it, but it's like the going through the process of grieving. um we go through denial, no, that can't be
Yes.
true, or no, right? And then the bargaining, and then there's depression, and then some people go back. There's no it's not a linear process. You can go back to the beginning and stay in
Hmm.
anger for a while, and because it can be, it can change everything, when you start to move into that higher, or different, I should say, vibrational state. You're not necessarily connecting with the same friends, and you might leave your job, and while it's amazing and wonderful, it can be hard. So we don't always want to
Absolutely.
choose what's hard.
Yeah. And, I think like the ego will run from that. The ego turns away from that. When we get into these higher frequency energies and they start working their way through the body and it's showing us everything that needs to be healed, the ego does not like that. It's not
That's
comfortable.
right.
It's uncomfortable and it's new. And even though we on a soul level are remembering who we are, the ego says, hey, this isn't the life that I've lived up until now. This is not the programming that I have installed. And that could
Yeah.
be very disconcerting. And I think for a lot of people, that's like a tuck and run kind of response. Um, and I think what this process is showing us is that we need to lean into it and trust and
Mm-hmm.
reconnect with that unknown and get comfortable with that because that's our soul's guidance. And when we can do that, we
Exactly.
start to get navigated down our life's path instead of the path
Mm-hmm.
that the ego wants to take us down, which is the only, what it knows, working from a very limited
Right.
playbook.
Right. I remember I studied Shambhala Buddhism for a little while when I first, this is before I kind of woke up, but I started realizing that maybe I was repeating patterns in my life around, this was in 2006. I went through this breakup, and I'd been in these series of kind of relationships that had been kind of the same. Actually, I was engaged to somebody, and went through this depression, a depression. And I started reading the book When Things Fall Apart by Pema Chodron,
Hmm.
and it was the first time that I'd ever heard anybody say, you are not your thoughts. And I had always just thought that, there were these thoughts in my head and they're just something that I believe, they're part of me. And when I read that, I was like, oh, interesting. And I'd heard, some people don't always understand what ego is. They think, oh, you're arrogant, you're egotistical. No, the ego
Right.
is like a part of your socially created identity, which is really your false
Hmm.
identity. And anyway, but that moment of realizing that I didn't have to believe some of these, thoughts about myself. They were telling me why I couldn't do this, or I was never going to that. And, making me feel bad about myself was, I think I see that as the first step, towards my own awakening. And I think for a lot of people, just being aware that there is this ego, and just, developing
Hmm.
that awareness is one of the first steps. So there's hope.
There is hope. Yeah, it was Eckhart Tolle's book, The Power of
Yes.
Now, that really helped me. That was one
Yes.
of the first ones I dove into right after awakening. And
Same.
it's if you're observing your thoughts, who's the one observing the thoughts? So there's this other
Right.
being, right?
Yeah.
And that was just so profound for me. I went on to read A New Earth, his second book. Very, very helpful to kind of frame that perspective to know that the thoughts are just coming up and passing through. It's the energy.
Yeah.
It's the energy moving through your body. And for us to experience the dense energy, it's going to manifest in these thoughts that are dense thoughts, or we could term them negative thoughts, um,
Yeah.
based on limiting beliefs. And it's okay to have these thoughts. We're not trying to get rid of anything. We're trying to accept it all and just allow it all to coexist,
Mm.
and bring it to the party, so to speak.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know.
And I think, like you said, limiting beliefs, and it's like, where does it come from? Like, why do we even have these egos, and why is it there? And it comes often from a good place, like, don't run in the
Mm-hmm.
street, don't talk to strangers, but it goes into overdrive and starts to,
Yeah.
freak out about things that are in an irrational way. And I think that's a lot of what the work I do with people. I do hypnotherapy. So getting into like the deep subconscious. So it's not only, and it's not only from childhood, as I know, but from past lives. And we
Mm-hmm.
carry this deep trauma, and that's a whole other layer,
Oh
you
yeah.
know, why do I feel so scared of this? Why do I have this irrational fear or reaction?
Mm-hmm.
Well, if you can't, especially if you can't pinpoint a time and a place in the current life, it's almost always definitely from a past life, and it's usually both, right?
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. And I always talk about working with the energy because I know a lot of times, everybody's going to want to try to figure out like or remember the actual event. The event could come through.
Right.
We start to have these visions of a different person, a different time. And oftentimes those are memories that are coming through. So we work with the energy, but the ego, like you say, it's very interesting because it gets into this fight or flight mode, which is the safety. It's, run from the bear. Okay, there's a bear
Yep.
attacking, but got to get out of Dodge, right? And the
Yep.
ego, this energy kicks up and we get all these chemicals, stress chemicals. We tighten up, we start breathing from the upper lobes of the lungs. And we never really get out of that. So it starts applying that energy to all these other situations irrationally. And before
Mm-hmm.
you know it, you're getting sick, you're running to the ground, you're just, your energy's not flowing. And
Yep.
that's a big piece of the work that I do. I know you do as well, is really releasing that and allowing that to be and not attaching to it. So you can
Yep.
restore your energy flow and just get your divine higher frequency light moving through you.
Yeah. Beautiful. What you said just reminds me of something that I always try to remind my clients of, which is, there is this thing called the ego, which can manifest in, beliefs or thoughts. And there's also emotions that are connected to that. And so
Mm-hmm.
I think sometimes people get confused in there, because it's like, no, 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 you don't want to separate from those emotions. You want to feel it. You want to
Right.
allow them in. The ego, we don't always want to, attach. We don't want to attach to it. We want to be aware of it. But the emotions, we want to allow ourselves to feel them because they have
Mm-hmm.
information for us, and they contain, and it's like we move through them, we allow them to come up, and yet we also want to, release them and not be stuck in there. And I think, you know, I'm sure you see this too, that some people have a fear of, well, what if I bring up all this stuff from my
Yes.
past? Am I going to be able to function? Am I going to just be on a crumpled heap on the floor all day? Am I going to get sucked back into that? I've tried to do so much
Mm-hmm.
work, and I see nowadays with, the energy that's happening, there's so much that is being asked to be healed. A lot of the shadows that a lot of people think, including myself, we all go through this. I
Oh
already
yeah.
dealt with that. It's like, why is this coming up again?
It's the
And it's
layers.
because, yeah, it's the
Yeah.
layers, right? And it's like, well, if you didn't quite finish healing that or moving through it, because I always say, like, if we were completely done, we could just drop dead tomorrow. We've got more to do in this life. So it's
Mm-hmm.
a lifelong learning. um, but it's like, well, it's coming up again because, we've already done a lot, but there might be one last little piece to move through, or you know and another sort of layer that we wouldn't have been able to manage or move through
Mm-hmm.
before because we didn't have the awareness or the tools, but now we do. And we have the tools now, and this is where the inner child comes in, and the parent reparenting the inner child,
Yeah.
that you have this ability to cope, and with your guides, with divine sources of love, and to help you move forward through awakening too, right?
Yeah. And the more you anchor of your higher self, the more perspective you have as your consciousness expands. Um, these wounds will continue to come up, but they come up so that they give you an opportunity to experience them again from a different level of awareness, right?
Yes.
Which brings forward more integration opportunity to ground more of your higher self. Because when you can do that and accept it and be okay with it, you have the space now because that's no longer taking up space in your body. You've accepted it. And that's what I work with people on, because when they, like you said before, when they don't want to feel it because it's going to bring up all this stuff, that's taking up space in the body. It's energy.
Mm-hmm.
It's taking up energy,
Mm-hmm.
and it's not allowing your higher self to come through. So when we can look at it consistently, from higher levels of awareness. I call it like a spiral staircase, ascension. It's not a line. It's like a spiral staircase. We're going around through these cycles. We see it again. We see it from a higher perspective, and it allows a deeper point of integration, which allows more light to come through. So we just go through the cycles. We go through the cycles and we continue to feel. We let the feeling, the emotional body guide us. That's what we're being shown to lean into, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. And that's so opposite of what so much that we've been taught, which is don't feel. It's not safe to feel. Numb your emotions through TV or food or alcohol or whatever it is. And that, and that gets passed down for the generations. And that's another piece of it, as you know.
Yeah.
It's like, well, this is what my parents did and what their parents did. And there was this great meme that I saw the other day that was it was like an old timey picture of this woman in like Victorian clothes, but looking at the little girl and saying, I'm not going to heal in this lifetime and awaken to my higher self, but you will. It's just, it gives me such emotion, even when I think about it, because it's like our parents, the energies weren't with them at the time. They weren't,
right.
The energies on earth weren't there, and they were doing the best they could. And so much of it, so much of this is, it's like healing from our childhoods and healing from what was passed down to us from our families. And it's not, I think I just had somebody the other day say, I feel like I'm throwing my parents under the bus. And I was like, no, like, I understand that, we could be like, oh, they did this to me and they did this. And it's like, I know that you were doing the best you could. And I know that you were, thinking that or saying that, or writing it, in a pretend letter. But when you said this or did this, this is how it hurt me. This is how I've been carrying this with me. And this is how I've, maybe this limiting belief came from this. And so like, it is another layer, it's like, I like to say to people, when we're doing this sort of soul growth work, we're coming at it from all the places, like the thoughts, the emotions, the beliefs, and then, what's happening with the past lives, what's going on from what happened in childhood, without getting sucked back into it. Approaching at it, coming at it from like what's going on in your life right now without having to dredge up all the past and relive all these traumas. And then bringing, like, how do you bring in your divine guidance, your higher self, and activate your intuition and your inner child to help you kind of feel safe. And so in my experience, it's like, and of course there's meditation, right? To really just be aware in the first place. So it can seem like a lot, people like, well, that's a lot of stuff to do, but really
to get into,
we have time, we have plenty of time to move through this. That's why we've all chosen to incarnate, because this is a lifetime when we're ready and we have the tools to do it.
It's like, why would we want to come now, right? It's like, why did I come now?
I know. We volunteered. We
volunteered. Wait, what?
Why did I do that?
But yeah, it's the feelings, the emotions that are really the guide, because I know we spend a lot of time trying to connect with our spirit guides, trying to connect with other aspects of us, whoever it may be. And if we could just realize that the emotions really are the roadmap to getting into the body, because the only reason we're feeling this stress and anxiety is because we're living out here. We're not in the body, right? So when we can get in the body and breathe into the body, because a lot of this stuff's stuck, as you know, like in the solar plexus, big area of blockage. I come across that a lot with a lot of people that I work with. And the energy's not getting up into the heart. It's not coming up the channel, and it's not getting up here. So when we could lean in and feel these emotions, when we could accept everything, it restores that sense of power, that sense of responsibility. We take the responsibility back instead of playing the victim and looking for people like our parents to blame for our troubles. We take that responsibility back. And when we do that, it's very freeing, because we regain control and we could get back into the body because we're no longer resisting. And then that energy starts to flow. And then the connection with the higher self and others really starts to come forward, the intuitive guidance, and that type of thing.
I feel like this is worth mentioning because I have a feeling some of your audience might be like this. I know I've had people say, you know, and I've probably been like this too, but sometimes there's a tendency, I think, when you're talking about, you know, we want to connect with our higher selves or, you know, higher guidance, you know, there's a tendency to want to do that because it feels good, because it's light, to avoid doing the shadow work, to avoid feeling. Have you seen that?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Right.
But doesn't that create a
Yeah,
separation? Because if I'm like, okay, I'm
absolutely.
trying to get
Yes.
to my higher self and connect with my higher self, my guides, and I can't do it, you're in a program of the limiting belief of separation, that you are separate, right? And you need to
Yeah.
let go
Right.
of that. And I tell people this all the time,
Yeah.
let go of that expectation and bring it back in here. And that energy will naturally come forward when you work through the shadows and the
Yeah.
blockages.
Right. Right. And also it's a learning of like, it's not out there, it's
Mm-hmm.
within here, you
Right.
know, and that's, you know, with the Akashic records is you do Akashic records,
Mm-hmm.
right? You know, like it's like I will say to people, it's right there. It's like around your light body. It's like right, so accessible to us, just that nobody's
Mm-hmm.
taught us that we can do that. And like you said, you know, we have to know, take some time to be like, well, what's a fear that's stopping me from accessing this deeper part of myself, this, you know, this wisdom that is right here for me about my eternal soul. What's that about, you know, and why is that here? And until we do that, we are going to continue that sense of separation, which is what has caused
Right.
everything, all the suffering. It is because we believe we're separate.
Yeah, even the Akashic records, I mean, just the name, it just implies
Yeah,
something
going
out there.
somewhere. Yep.
When in
Yep.
reality, we bring all of that in. It's encoded in our DNA. It's encoded
Yep.
in our physical body. So instead of looking out there, we come into the body and we activate that, we unlock that. And as soon as we do that, information starts to come up and we could perceive it. The way there is inside. It's in. We came here to ground our higher selves, to live as our higher selves in this dimensional field. And the way to do that is to get, to bring it to the body.
Yeah.
Breathe, get
Yeah.
in consciously, become your breath, and experience everything that it is to be physical right here.
Yeah. Yep. Yep. 100%. I think we're moving there. I think we're more and more people are finding the courage, you know, because there is that
Yeah.
free will piece that,
Mm-hmm.
you know, even though there's things that are creating openings and opportunities, and I see it with people in my life, family, friends, you know,
Mm-hmm.
there's opportunities to awaken, there's opportunity to
Yeah.
see, but I mean, there are people that say, nope, you know, I'm not ready for that, or I don't want to do that. I had somebody say to me once, I just want to read the newspaper and have my coffee every morning, and I don't want to think about that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And like, you know, read the newspaper every morning that's gonna keep you in 3D, you know. But it's like, well, who am I to say? I can't tell her you can't do that, you know, that's her choice. She
Of
has that
course.
ability to make that
Mm-hmm.
choice for herself. She might have to work on it again in her next life.
Yeah.
She could save herself some time if she but she may not feel that she has the tools to, you know, I think some people may know deep down, like, you know, I know somebody who said to me once, he does intuitive work well. He's like, I'll say to people, if you ask a question, be prepared to hear the answer. It might not be
Mm-hmm.
something you want to hear. And it's like they may have
Right.
that awareness, like, is that something I really am ready to deal with, to cope? Am I gonna be able to
Yeah.
cope with this? So
See,
it's
that's
interesting.
that's the illusion of free will. Okay, because so many times, because people are choosing to do something and they think they're exercising free will, they're submitting to the programming of the ego, right?
Mm-hmm.
So really the free will, we have free will, and the free will is to recognize that and make the choice to do something different. So
Mm-hmm.
like people say, well, I could do this because I have free will, but you're taking an action based on a limiting belief or programming, right?
Right.
Exercise your true free will and recognize that, and then move into the heart and allow yourself to be guided. And that's so,
Yeah.
so important. Um,
The heart.
because like, it's, people will use that as a crutch. Well, I could do this, I could do whatever I want. That's, how this is a free will universe. But we're still being our lives are being controlled by the programming. And if you don't
Yes.
recognize it, you're going to think that you're doing
Right.
what's in alignment with your higher self, and you're
Right.
really not, you
Right.
know? Yeah.
I'm glad you mentioned the programming because I've had a few people say to me, family members really, um, well, when you talk about some of that stuff, it's dark, and I don't
Mm-hmm.
want to think about those things that are dark and they're kind of negative. And I will say, I obviously don't want to focus on things that are dark or negative either, but we have to acknowledge when we're being programmed. So it's like you can't, if you're listening to the news, you're listening to
Mm-hmm.
commercials. I mean, commercials isn't obvious. Like they're like expert master manipulators of our emotions, through just advertising. And then of course the news is a
Yeah.
whole different level. And
We're
so it's
being
like
programmed.
if you don't realize that you're being programmed,
Mm-hmm.
then you're going to continue to be programmed. I had somebody say to me once, well, I think I would know if I was being brainwashed. And I was like,
Mm-mm.
I don't think so. You don't know. And, it is important to acknowledge
Yeah.
some of that darker stuff so we can say, okay, I see that, but I'm going to choose, that's a different highway. I'm not going to be on that highway. I'm going to be over here. I'm going to protect myself
Mm-hmm.
from that. Easier said than done, of course, because we're always being
Easier
programmed.
said. I always say,
Yeah.
I've said this before, like the news to me, if I want to kind of gauge how much I've grown, I'll turn the news on for like 30 seconds. I'll be like, okay, got a little more work to do, right? Because they're
Yeah.
just hammering, hammering,
Yeah.
hammering. It's fear, fear, fear.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
Even we see it with like all the medical ads and stuff, with like every other commercial, it seems like is some sort of drug, or a
Yep.
pill.
Yep.
So it's controlling behavior based on fear. And what that does is it disempowers people, because then we think we need some sort of external solution to the problem, and we don't
Yep.
take responsibility for control over our own lives. Again, that's where like that free will
Yeah.
can be lost, because you're being controlled
Well,
and
you
you don't
don't
even
have
know
free
it.
will.
You don't.
Right.
Yeah, it's
Right.
lost. You're being
Right.
controlled on a subconscious level, and you don't even know it. And it's simply because those are the patterns that you've been exposed to, your whole life. So for me, I was always on to that kind of stuff. It didn't feel right. It didn't sit right with me. But when I had my, that big awakening moment, and it's like, oh, everything that I knew was true is true. It was just shown to me. Then you have a new lens to look at everything through.
Yeah.
And you
Right.
realize that we're living in this matrix, this false reality,
Hmm.
and none of it's
Hmm.
real. It's just a
Hmm.
manifestation of energy.
Right.
And we could kind of
Right.
navigate it a little bit differently now and bring something new forward, our light.
Exactly. Exactly. And that's, I think that's like the law of attraction, the law of resonance, I like to call it, because the law of attraction is
Mm-hmm.
always talked about. But as it's one of the things that is part of the awakening, is learning that we can create our own realities with
Yeah.
our own energy, and it's tricky to do that. Um, I've done it. I know you've done it. Um, but it's like we start to believe, create this kind of fantasy world of how we are, what we believe about ourselves, which the ego might say, well, that's ridiculous. You're just making up all this nonsense, or what our reality could be like. Like if I know for me, my husband and I, we had this dream of living in, rural Maine on a homestead and homeschooling our
Mm.
kids and having our own businesses. And because we were both in the matrix, in our old 40-hour work week jobs. And
Yeah.
I didn't know at that time. I said, how would we even do this? How would we, financially, just logistically, all that stuff. And I just wrote it down, and we drew pictures of it, and little things, like we started moving towards it in little ways. I started my business first, then he's a carpenter, and he started his own carpentry business. And then COVID happened, and we took our kids out of school, just like, all right,
Okay. Yeah.
we're done with this. So that was like, there's the homeschooling. And then also, and the house came around that same time, but it was kind of like, you know, I had to, I don't know, my husband did this too, because I helped him a little bit, but I know for myself, I had to really start to shift my mindset around what was possible. Anytime, I can't do that, or how are we going to, this isn't going to happen,
Mm-hmm.
or, changing those thoughts, reprogramming them with mantras, and then just, doing little things as if this were my reality, as if I were already starting to live like
Yeah.
this.
Yes.
And that's the magic about, what I guess it does have a little bit to do with free will, but just the
Mm-hmm.
abilities that we have that we're learning to activate, there's like all these
Yeah.
descended masters tried to teach when they walked the earth, and this is what we're all learning how to do. And once we learn that, everything changes. It's like we live in this magical world and we can master the
Yeah.
matrix.
It's
Right, instead of
interesting you
having
bring
it
that
master
up
us.
because when I was actually in meditation earlier today, I connected with my guide and we were talking about that very thing because a lot of times when we have these aspirations, we don't have the roadmap to get there. And that's very, very scary. And the mind will try to figure it out based on what it knows, based on its
Yep.
programming, right?
Yep.
But when we can recenter and just allow ourselves to be okay with the idea of what we want, it starts to come through, and it'll come through baby steps at a time, right? You'll get a little bit
Mm-hmm.
of a nudge in one direction and something you'll take inspired action on that's going to lead you down that path.
Totally.
And the
Totally.
beauty of it is the journey. Like with you, COVID happened, you pulled your kids out. So these things started coming together in a way that you might not have expected, but yet the mind probably was like, well, how is all this going to happen? So when we let go of that, we allow for the magic to come forward,
Yeah.
because we're not clamping off our energy by trying
Right.
to figure it out in our head all the time. And
Right.
that's what I was talking about in meditation day, was just that very thing. When we run into something that's difficult or a challenge, it's okay to just
Mm-hmm.
be like, all right, I'm going to sit back and I'm just going to let that go for now. I'm going to just center
Mm-hmm.
and feel. And then so often, hours later, days later, week, whatever it may be, the answer comes forward.
Comes
And
through.
that's the
Yeah.
magic.
Yeah. Absolutely. That's
Yeah.
so cool that you were meditating on that. I've
Just
I
today.
personally, yeah, I mean that's the resonance, right? You can't make this stuff up. I love it.
No, in fact, I recorded a video for youth that's going up on YouTube Thursday, right
Really?
after I had that meditation, and it's talking about exactly what we just
Great.
talked about.
That's great.
So
That's just the resonance.
you can't
I
make this up.
personally, no, I know. It's just, even though I'm like,
That's so
I know
crazy.
this stuff, but I still love it when I
Yeah.
get pleasantly surprised. One thing that I've been noticing recently is there's been some things happening with other people, like different relationships, and just kind of
Hmm.
weird people doing some weird stuff. And so and it doesn't, it just kind of, somebody might say something, or they're something. I know I recently had this thing where somebody was unhappy with something I had said or done, um and she was coming from this like triggered place, and just a
Okay.
little bit of attacking and accusing. And my instant, my triggered ego reaction was like, oh, what did I do? Maybe I shouldn't have done this, I shouldn't have done that, and like blaming myself and all this stuff. um but I know I've had this past life that I'm very connected to, where I was kicked out of a village, pushed out of the village because I was teaching kids like magicy witchy things, and the parents didn't like it, and I was
Mm.
drowned because they thought I was some evil witch or something. And so in that life, I remember, my feeling was, well, what did I do? I must have done something so bad. Why did they? I must have done something wrong. What did I did
Right.
something wrong? Kind of beating myself up. And so with this, that situation that I just mentioned, instead of saying, well, it's my fault, and of course there's always a learning there, and I'm like, well, maybe I could have improved something, but I was like, maybe what am I meant to be learning from this? So that's like, I think that's the biggest question. Like, what, there's something as a challenge
Hmm.
or experience, and just asking why, what am I meant to be learning? There's always a lesson. And I meditated on it when the Akashic records about it. And what came up was boundaries, and like standing up for myself, and saying like, what? No, like that's the way you're talking to me, is not okay. I don't think I actually said it that way, but the
Hmm.
energy of it was kind of like standing up. And I believe that this situation, which is quite recent actually, was coming up as another opportunity for me to kind of stand in that place of, I guess, power is one word, or just my own truth or my own
Stand in your power.
embodiment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm.
And, it's like, that's not okay. And anyways, and I think, what a lot of us can do to, there's all kinds of instability. There's the financial thing. There's all these, what's going on. There's a lot of just people in this state of just, this is, like on edge. And sometimes it's just one little thing that puts people over the edge. And I think instead of going into that place of, oh, that, everything goes wrong, or I can't handle this, or I'm never going to move through this, but just, well, what
That's
can
a
I learn?
victim.
Yeah. And just being open, like, how can I move through this? Maybe there's a reason this is happening. Maybe there's something I'm meant to be learning. Just having that openness then helps us move through that space. Definitely easier said than done, but
it's also, I think, an opportunity for the person that you interacted with to maybe encounter an energy that they weren't expecting. Because those kind of situations give rise to something from within them, because then they see something within you that's a reflection of something that they're trying to awaken to within them.
Yes.
And there's something there, an opportunity for them to feel. Now, a lot of times they don't. They'll identify with the emotion, maybe get combative or more responsive, you know what I mean? More defensive. But we plant seeds that way because a lot of times people walk away from that situation and be like, what the heck was that? I didn't expect that reaction. So it's always good to be authentic, as and stand in your power in situations like that, because you are really on a quantum level helping the other person feel something they need to feel, so it's always a two-way street.
It's a soul contract. Like, I came into your life to help you learn this lesson, and you came into my life to help me learn that lesson. And we may not learn it right in that moment, but later on,
I can plant a seed, and maybe they'll move into another situation and they'll be like, oh, well, Rachel reacted this way, maybe this person's going to, so maybe I'm going to create a little space here and observe what's happening, or observe my thoughts before I react, and go about the interaction differently. That's a growth moment.
Yeah. One would hope, right?
One would hope. Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. That's all part of the experience of moving through, free will.
Yeah. I think it's important. Yeah. I mean, we have that perspective, but we have the awareness. We can navigate these interactions so much more fluidly because we don't attach to them. We don't beat ourselves up. We don't judge ourselves. When we could operate from a perspective of authenticity, even though it may not be a positive interaction with the person that we're with from their perspective, if we're authentic, we're bringing what is needed to the table at that moment.
Yep.
And that's really all you need to do.
Yeah. It's funny because well, I guess he's my husband. I was like, maybe I shouldn't talk about him, but I'll just say, I was saying this to him. I'll say in the context of me that, sometimes we want to get along with people. We want to just have people like us. There's that ego, doesn't want to be rejected, wants to be accepted.
That was me.
But right. And I'm that way. I have some control. Some of my stuff is more like control, and I have to be aware of that. But of course, there's being liked and accepted too. But sometimes that leads us into, not standing up for ourselves, or just, being, letting the other person, in going to that place of shame and self-blame.
Kind of run all over you. Yeah.
Yeah. Just to try to get along and make peace. And I think a lot of people operate that way. Don't rock the boat, just be nice, and it's hard. And that's right. I work, a lot of Archangel Michael energy. It's like that Archangel Michael energy is that warrior, protection sort of. You can come from a place of love and also
strength.
Stand up for yourself and strength. Exactly. And then you often gain people's respect. I mean, they may not show it to you, but it might be there somewhere.
That's a good energy. I mean, we see this all the time with kids when they're being bullied, when they stand in their power, it's a reaction that the bully doesn't expect.
Yeah.
Right. And then all of a sudden it's like, whoa. And that awakens something within the person that's doing the bullying.
Flips the switch. Yep.
Flips the switch like, whoa, I didn't, So that's our power. Right there is our power. We don't have to be aggressive or run anybody over. We could just anchor it in and be that and let it shine.
Yeah.
Just let it shine. Yep. And that awakens people, or at least, like I said, it plants the seeds because they're seeing something within you. And we know, like with a bully, often there's low self-esteem, whatever it may be, and that's why they're picking on others. When you could show them that, now that strength is reflected back to them from you, so they get to see an aspect of them that they're not honoring.
Yeah.
Just a strength, and that's an awakening, an opportunity for an awakening moment, right?
Yeah.
If not, it comes later.
Right.
They keep having those experiences.
Right. Yeah. You mirror. I think I've seen that with clients, like the parent will say something that seems so awful to that child, but they're really just mirroring what they feel about themselves. They're just projecting on the child. Yeah. So there's something else I was going to say. Of course, I can't remember what it was now. It was obviously very important. Anyway, but it's such a blessing to be able to kind of, walk with people and hold their hand through these, experiences. And I think in the consciousness awakening community, it's so, I know this, and I think this is being talked about more, but we have to take the time to do our inner work. We have to take the time to go through the shadows and not just be all in the light all the time. I mean, we are always, ideally the light is guiding us, but it's not fun. It's not fun to always do that, that work, because it doesn't feel good always, but we know, and we're like,
but that's the path. Right. That's the guidance, and that's what I do is so much of my content and, what I teach really comes out of my experiences, what I've gone through, what I've been through, and how I've grown from it, and what I've gotten from my guides and that kind of thing. I've got a really unique, I kind of a cool connection. As you do, with our guides, it's like very telepathic, very close, amazing fluidness with that. And I'll bring that forward, and I'll share that with people because that's, they help me so much. They help me so much. And we want to just tell people that they have the ability to connect as well. Just sometimes we look in the wrong direction to be able to do that. Follow the emotions, follow where you're being guided, whatever's coming up in the moment, honor it, bring love forward. And that's going to illuminate the path.
Beautiful. Yeah.
But I think we could wrap it up. I think we've gone about 45 minutes.
Yeah. Right.
I had such an amazing time. This was a fantastic discussion.
This was fun. It was fun.
I want to give you an opportunity to let my subscribers, followers know how they could learn more about you and find more information about you. So go ahead.
Yeah. So probably the best way is my website, which is soulfulworkconsulting.com, but I also have rachelhortonwhite.com. And that's where I share, videos, and I have a blog that I put, different musings up on, meditations. I have a podcast on SoundCloud and iTunes called The Courageous Path with different, meditations. And I do hypnotherapy. So a lot of those are like hypnotherapy meditations. And, I do a lot of work with people, helping them develop their intuition, clear ego, just remove limiting beliefs and work with their energies and emotions to kind of create their highest and best selves through Akashic records readings, hypnotherapy, past life regressions, just intuitive coaching. And I teach some classes on teach people how to read the Akashic records. Right now you mentioned the book I wrote, Tools for the Awakening Soul, which I'm actually doing a book club class right now, and in a few months, where it's just like reading the book and kind of moving through the chapters together, and in a few months I'll be doing this 10-month program called it's an intuitive guide program, the Soulful Work Method, where I teach people to kind of do what I do, and we move through our own inner work, like everything we were talking about, and then learn about 5D spiritual marketing, learn how to read the Akashic records. So yeah, all that is there. Facebook, I have Soulful Work Intuitive Consulting Facebook page. I'm also on Instagram under Soulful Work Consulting. There's a few other platforms, but those are the big ones. So yeah.
Very cool. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. Definitely we'll have to stay in touch.
I hope so. Yeah.
I am so grateful that you came on. And hopefully everyone watching enjoyed it and took something away and can share it with others.
I hope so. It's just so
So
cool how we have like, I feel like we're like in the same sort of mind because we're just in the same vibration. Like we're just speaking each other's thoughts. It's just so cool when that
absolutely, yeah. It's incredible. That is, I love
happens.
that. That's the magic, right? That's the
Exactly.
magic.
Yep.
So, but we'll talk soon, Rachel. And it
Thanks,
was
Mark.
so great seeing you.
Thank you.